Thank you everybody for joining us today. We're going to get started on time. It's 2 o'clock. Thank you for getting in on this webinar to go over the orders that were released last week. I'm going to turn this over to John and Melissa. And again, please be sure to make sure your lines are always muted and use the chat feature only to ask questions, which we will address at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Hope. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us today under these difficult circumstances. By way of background, over the last several months since this disaster of COVID-19 began, we've worked with the governor's team on trying to craft aid for restaurants and also to get restaurants open safely as quickly as possible. First, starting with outdoor dining in the yellow phase, which we were able to get the governor to agree to and implement, and then with green standards that were as fair as we could get done, particularly relative to many other states in their first stage of opening. And it's been a very collaborative effort with the governor's team talking with us about ideas, us trying to add some sense and practicality to the safety. And then over the last couple of weeks prior to the order on July 15th, the governor's team had reached out to us, said there may be a need to implement some additional mitigating circumstances. We worked with them on many ideas that we thought could add to the already safe situations that restaurants were providing, and yet without crippling the restaurant business. And then on the morning of the 15th, we received a call from the governor's team again that they wanted to caucus with us, and they talked with us about some ideas that they had for a new plan, none of which were the ideas we had all agreed on in the past 2 weeks prior to that time. They were all new to us, including the devastating 25% number. It became apparent through the conversation that it wasn't really a consultation. It was more of a, we want to let you know we're going to do this. So we obviously were very disappointed at that. It was a break from the collaborative relationship we've had in working with them. And we had initially, in the very first meeting that we had to talk about grade standards, explained to them that 25% was not a sustainable number. It was brought up as early as 2 months ago. And that's why the governor's team wisely opened with 50%. Where the 25% came from, we're not real sure. So that's how we got here. That's a background of where we are today. And we've been working feverishly since the order came out to try to get clarification on some of the parts of it that were not clear, which was many parts. And thankfully, Melissa Bova, our VP of Government Affairs, was able to get everything, I think all of the questions that will probably be answered, or questions asked today, we can answer. And we remain here to aid you in every way we can as you're trying to get through this. We know that at 50%, restaurants are barely surviving. Many had figured out creative ways to do a fair amount of business with outdoor dining, with cocktails to go, and with expansion of premises. At 25%, we know it is going to be really, really difficult. So we'll continue to do everything we can to try to help in every way that we can. Right now, we're trying to raise awareness that 25% is not sustainable. And from a safety standpoint, if you're doing social distancing and masking, there's no difference between 25 and 50, except that 25 puts restaurants out of business. We'll talk more about that at the very end, where Melissa will talk about what you can do. But with that, let's get into the basics of the order and then try to answer all of the specific questions that you may have. And with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa Bova. Melissa, take it away.
Thanks, John. I'm going to just do a few housekeeping notes because I know we have a number of people on this call. John usually does this, but I'll do it today. This call is strictly for members of the hospitality industry. If you are part of the press, this is not the call for you. John or I would be happy to respond to any specific questions you have, but the press is not permitted to participate in these calls. This is a call strictly for PRLA membership. Another thing, because I know we're going to go down this rabbit hole, I am not here to get into the politics. We're not here to do any bashing of anyone. I know everybody's really frustrated, but all I'm doing today is going to be providing you the facts and information that we have and telling you what facts and information we are still waiting on. Second, I know, can everyone hear me okay, or are we, all right, let me see if we can try another.
Do I sound any better now?
That's perfect.
Okay, all right. Whew, okay. So I won't repeat what I said before because I hope you all just put your ear to the mic and listened. Second, I know we're getting a lot of questions. If I answer your question during the webinar, I'm probably not going to have time to answer it later. So if you have a question, please wait and see if I address it so we can save some time at the end. We have about almost 400 people on the webinar already. So please sit on your questions. And if I don't get to it, type it in at the end. As you know, I will spend as much time on questions as you need me to. All right. Let's get into kind of the gist of the order, and then I promise we will go down the private event rabbit hole and the bar service rabbit hole and all of the rabbit holes that are part of this new decision. John gave you the background. This was an announcement made at 3:30 last Wednesday, effective midnight, so effective July 16th. This was a statewide order, so it doesn't matter if you had 200 cases over the course of a week or you had 6 cases over the course of a week. COVID does not know county lines, and the governor believes that a statewide order was needed. Not getting political, that's just the decision that was made. Bar service is prohibited in this order, so there cannot be anybody seated at the bar, even if they're consuming non-alcoholic beverages. And there is going to be a delineation between outdoor and indoor bars, so don't ask me that question yet. But bar service generally is prohibited for right now. I know I'm going to get this question, so I'm going to answer it now. We do not have a timeline for this order. This is not it's going to be 2 weeks and then we'll reassess. This is the way it is now, and they don't want it to be forever, but this is the way it is right now. So if you're going to ask me when it's going to end, I know I like to try and speculate. I'm not even going to try and speculate on this one. The other part of this order, alcohol must be served with a meal. You cannot go in and get a drink and then leave after having that drink. The alcohol must be purchased in conjunction with a meal. I will get into the weeds on that one. This is just your broader overview. Occupancy is reduced to 25% inside. So for restaurants, hotels, for your restaurants that are serving the public, 25% is your new capacity. It used to be 50%. It's now 25%. Outside, your outdoor seating remains unchanged. So that's your socially distanced, which gets you to about 24 people per every 1,000 square foot. They made no change to outdoor seating. The meal requirement applies inside and outside. The meal requirement for alcohol applies on the entire licensed premise. I know there's some confusion there, but if you're outdoors, you can have 24 per 1,000, about the 50% occupancy, but the meal requirement is universal. Events for statewide, and I promise I will talk about Allegheny County and Philadelphia. Events are limited to 25 people indoors. That is a specific event. So that is your weddings, your graduation parties, your work lunches that everybody goes out. You can't have more than a group of 25 in one place at one time. 250 was the number before. 250 remains the number for outdoors. This is one that you were all probably following all along, but they reiterated this. All of your guests must be seated when they are consuming food or drink. So a lot of you might have guessed that they were waiting for their table and they go up to the bar and they want to get a drink, which they can't do anymore because you can't have bar service, and wait for their table. So essentially, I term it affectionately as butts and seats. All of your guests have to be seated within your facility if they're going to be consuming food or beverage. So your standing cocktail hours are not going to be happening at this moment unless you're seated doing cocktail hour, which kind of defeats the purpose. Another thing I want to go through is that beer to go, cocktails to go, and wine to go, if you have that permit, are still permitted. Another subject of confusion is a lot of people thought that when you hit green, you couldn't do cocktails to go anymore. You are still allowed to do that. And quite frankly, I urge you to embrace that and go back to embracing that takeout model that you might have had before. So cocktails to go will be available to all of you until you hit 60% capacity indoors. And currently you're at 25%. So those are still available to you and you should use them. I'm going to tell you this today. The answers we have today, it's like a fun little game when we get a new ruling or an edict or a new requirement. You were waiting for the department to provide the guidance. And sometimes that department's the governor's office, sometimes it's DCED. This time I thought it would be PLCB because it was really related to alcohol, and apparently Department of Health decided to embrace this order. So the guidance we have today is the guidance from the Department of Health. So for my super nitty-gritty liquor code questions, still waiting on that guidance from the LCB, and we toyed with not doing the webinar today until we could get all of the guidance, but I think the information we have today is important and helpful enough for all of you to hear it, and then on Wednesday, we should have the guidance from the LCB to kind of answer any of those lingering questions that we aren't able to address today. But the gist of the order, the enforcement measures of the order really have been delineated by the Department of Health this time. So let's jump into the details. Few things, and this is it's a create your own adventure by county at this point. This is a statewide order, but counties, especially counties with health departments, can have more restrictions. So Philadelphia is one of those counties that have restrictions that are more strict than this order. So you still can't have indoor dining in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia now, for your outdoor dining, that alcohol has to be purchased with food. You can't, if you have a bar set up outside, you're not allowed to be using that either. So in Philadelphia, that ban on indoor dining continues until at least August 1st. And you're going to ask me, and I don't know because they're not telling us. I don't know if that's going to change on August 1st, if they're going to align with the state or not. I can't predict that. So I can't understand the governor. I'm certainly not going to try and get in Mayor Kenny's head on that one. But for Philadelphia, all of these rules apply to your outdoor dining. You still can't do indoor. Let's go to Allegheny because they like to make it a little bit more exciting. Allegheny County on Friday, it's sad that you're thanking them for this, but thankfully rescinded their previous order, which included a ban on indoor dining and aligned somewhat closely, my wedding venues, I'm sorry, to the state guidelines. So on Friday, beginning at 5 o'clock, Allegheny County adopted the statewide orders with a few exceptions. Restaurants and events in-house must end by 11 p.m. You can't provide any food or beverage service after 11 p.m. So if there's a wedding's got to stop at 11. Your table service has to stop at 11 p.m. in Allegheny County. You can continue to do takeout after 11 p.m. Tobacco use is prohibited in Allegheny County. So if you have an exception under the liquor code or you're a casino, you are not allowed to use tobacco. It's prohibited indoors and outdoors. And then Allegheny County, in furtherance of beyond what the state did, as I said, the state will allow outdoor events safely socially distanced at 250 to continue. Allegheny County has restricted outdoor events to 50 people. I know the order reads weird, and I know some people are saying that the definition of event doesn't necessarily include a wedding, so therefore could a wedding operate at 25% for outdoors or 250 for outdoors. I asked the Allegheny County Health Department and they said 50 is the number for weddings, any type of event outdoors. So that's the answer we got. That's what they will be enforcing. So in Allegheny County, you're at 25 for an event indoors, 50 for an event outdoors, statewide 25 indoors, 250 outdoors. Okay. What's a meal? They have adopted, which is good because that's what we asked them to do, the definition that is in the liquor code for what is considered a meal. So as you can see here, it's food prepared on the premises sufficient to constitute breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It shall not mean a snack such as pretzels, popcorn, chips, or similar food. You cannot give somebody a bag of chips and say that's your meal. So if you were doing that, you should probably stop that. It does need to be something that is actually prepared by you on the premises that would constitute an actual meal for a person. Now, if you have 3 people that are getting the appetizer sampler, I think that that would constitute a meal for them because you're preparing it on site. But if you are giving them, you know, like I said, some crackers or something like that, that would not constitute a meal. There's a question that I've gotten before. Does it have to be a meal for each person? That has not been delineated, but I can tell you with pretty good authority that yes, it can't be one person at your table gets a burger and everybody can drink. So everybody, there needs to be some type of meal that would constitute breakfast, lunch, or dinner for the people seated at that table. I've been asking about alcohol. Apparently, as long as you get a hot dog and some French fries, you can have as much alcohol as you want. So there is no limit on alcohol. There is urging that you restrict how long people can be seated, because quite frankly, you probably want to turn your tables over a little quicker considering the less capacity that you have. But there is no limit on the amount of alcohol that can be consumed as long as the meal is purchased with the alcohol. I have gotten another question in the past of if somebody sits down and orders a beer and doesn't order their food, and then they get up, and because typically you take their drink order before their food, you really are going to want to try and do both at the same time, just to check that box. Now, if you're the type of restaurant or facility where people are coming in and they're going to get a meal, you need to look at how you would handle that. But the trigger is that it has to be food and alcohol together. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the 25 people rule. This is like, it's like fun math, except nothing's fun about this order. Indoor, universal across the state, except in Philadelphia, because you can't have anybody inside yet. No more than 25 people for a single event. You can have more than one event. So let's say you are going to have 3 weddings, and each wedding is going to be 24 people. And keep in mind, these numbers have to include staff. So if you have 3 staff working a wedding, you can only have 22 guests. But if you have 3 weddings going on and you can keep them separate in different rooms where they won't cross into one another, that would be permitted as long as you remain below that overall 25% capacity. So if you have enough space to fill, 200 people, then you would need to be no more than 50 people within the 2 spaces. So your trigger is 25 max, 25%. Same as it was with the 250 and 50%. Those are still what you're going to be looking at. I've been asked in the past of what if you have a conference and there's 250 people in the conference, but they're in different rooms. Permitted, but they can't cross-contaminate with one another is what they're saying. So if they're going to be in different rooms, they need to stay in different rooms. You don't want 12 people going into another room and those 12 people coming back into a room. That's what they're hoping to avoid here. As I said, capacity overall, even for if you are a hotel that has a lot of really small rooms, you still can't exceed more than 25% total of your fire code. And this is universal. This is restaurant license, hotel license, brewery license, winery license, club license. If you are serving alcohol, if you are permitted to do so, these are the rules that apply to you. And also for my restaurant friends, because I've gotten some concern about people who do private events. Your 25% rule doesn't mean that you could have a wedding larger than 25 people. You're still limited to 25 people for a select group. So even if, because you're a restaurant, you can't have more than 25 people in a single group. That's the general overview. I know we'll get lots of questions on that. Okay, so here's where we got a change from what we were originally told. So look, the needle's moving minusculely. The needle is moving. We did get clarification in the Department of Health guidance that if you are having an outdoor event, that's your 250 people, they are allowed to walk up to the bar and get their drinks. They have to have seats because you have to have seats to consume it, but they are permitted to go up to the bar. Oh, that's a nice, who is drawing on this? Okay, thank you for that. You may serve alcohol at a bar for a private event. If you are a restaurant and you have an outdoor bar, your bar has to remain closed. Indoors, no dice, no exceptions, none whatsoever. So no bar service. If you have a wedding for 20 people, they cannot go up to the bar and get their cocktails. You need to be providing table service for your guests in that scenario. Same for my restaurants. All alcohol and food has to be table service. And this, I've had this question before, not even for non-alcoholic beverages. So even if somebody wants to go up and get a Coke, it doesn't matter. It's the bar service universally that is not allowed indoors, but they are allowing bar service outdoors. Now you want to make sure you're socially distancing. But that's where you are in terms of your bar service. So no one's sitting at the bar and having a drink for a little while. What's next? I don't even know. I put this together an hour ago and I already forgot what I was talking about. All right, so wineries, breweries, and distilleries. The rules apply to you, and I'll say this again. It applies to clubs. If it applies to golf courses. Oh my golly, things are happening. It applies to golf courses and everything else. If you are a licensed entity, if you are doing private events, it applies to you. Further, even if you are not a licensed entity and you are having an event, even at your home, this technically applies to you. These 25 in-house 250, those are not limited to licensees. I'm speaking to it in context of licensees because of the fact that all of you are licensees or caterers to a certain extent. But if you are one of those entities, the rules do apply to you. This is the question that I've gotten from many of my wineries and breweries and distilleries. Food trucks are permitted. This is another one. I'm waiting for clarification from the LCB because there's that super annoying line in the guidance that says that the alcohol has to be served for on-premises, has to be the same transaction as a meal. That is difficult when you are a standalone winery or brewery and a food truck is a separate entity. The Department of Health has clarified that that is going to be permitted as long as it can be proven that they got a meal. So whether it's they have to go to the food truck and they get a coupon or a ticket that says, I ordered nachos, and then they can go do their tastings, or then they can go and get their beer or their bottle of wine or whatever it is. We're waiting for how that's going to be delineated, but there will be further guidance that will allow food trucks to operate in this space. The super specifics, we're leaving that to my friends from the LCB, but that will be permitted. And if Rachel Levine says it's okay, I'm gonna take it to the bank, and the Department of Health has said that it is okay. So that's my brief update on that piece. General questions. You know I had to throw in dance floors. I can't do a webinar without talking about dance floors. Dance floors are permitted. Who would have thunk it? They are allowed for your groups of 25 or less, or for your outdoor weddings. Of course, the mask rule continues to apply, and they cannot bring their beverage on the dance floor. So the beverages have to stay at their seat because every butt is in a seat. So they cannot take their rum and Coke onto the dance floor to drop it like it's hot. They have to leave everything at their seat, their food, their beverages, but you are allowed to dance and have live music under these orders. Never would have guessed. So that's that question, which I know I will get. The other one, it's not really a part of this webinar, but I want to touch upon it because I know we've gotten a lot of questions. A grant program was announced last week from the governor's office that would allow for hazard pay for what they consider to be essential workers. Why they do not think restaurant workers or hotel workers are not essential is a question, and a very valid question that we all have. And it is one that we have asked the governor's office, and as of 2/24 today, I have not been gifted with a response yet. So as soon as we get a response, we will get that out to you. As you know, and we'll get to kind of our internal workings, there is really a rhyme or reason. So we have asked what the rhyme or reason was that none of your employees were included. And of course, we will get you that information as soon as we are gifted with a response. Okay. For those of you that had the joy and pleasure of seeing me in person last week at a couple events, I talked about a few action items because and I'll answer this question again. The question always comes up, why aren't you suing? Why aren't you suing the governor? This is terrible. He's stomping on our rights. You need to sue. People have sued, and for every lawsuit, it has failed. The state Supreme Court has unilaterally said that the governor has this power. Even the US Supreme Court has declined to engage in this. So a lawsuit will do nothing other than have us spend a lot of money, and I love lawyers, but I think they're doing it okay. It'd be a lot of money given to a lawyer that wouldn't get us anywhere. But what we can do is a petition, which I know Ben or Stephanie is going to put up here in 10 seconds or less. We have started a petition that we ask you to sign and for you to share with your customers. And there is I hate petitions when everybody's like, look, I got all of these signatures, and they pat themselves on the back. We're going to do that, but we also are using this petition to put pressure on legislators, and that's the goal. We have a governor who is lame duck. That's not a bad thing to say. That's what he is. He's in his last term. He's not running for re-election. He doesn't have an election staring him in the face that he needs to pander to the people of Pennsylvania to get re-elected. Therefore, we need to focus on our legislators who are running for re-election. So for every signature that we get on this petition, they put in their address and it tells us who their legislator is. So then we can use it. If we have a legislator who we just think isn't getting it or should probably support some of our initiatives and they aren't, we can show them there are 3,000 people in your district that think that restaurants should be open. And we're not asking, 100% capacity. We're asking for enforcement to be done against the people breaking the rules, which should have been the first step all along. I think we agree with that. And we're asking to go back to normal operations that consist of social distancing. As John has said more than once, 25% means nothing. Social distancing is the only thing that stops the spread of COVID, and that is how we should be operating. And these mitigation efforts, like the joke says, if you get a burger or if you get a beer, you're going to get COVID, but if you get a burger and a beer, you won't get COVID. I mean, these mitigation steps, while I think we're well-intentioned, really don't take into consideration the social distancing, which is all we know, and the masking that we know actually stops the spread of COVID. So for that petition, please take a moment to sign that. Second, in the daily update that came out on Friday, and it will be in a few updates in the future, we're highlighting some legislative priorities in terms of what our industry is going to need, considering we continue to be part of these mitigation efforts and to a certain extent feel a little under attack. So we have a list of legislative priorities consisting of a grant program for restaurants, also some really important things in there like liability protection. There is no point in reopening to 50%, 100%, or anything in between if you don't have liability protection. Further, we're looking at allowing you to hold off on any late fees and allow you a catch-up period for your sales tax and other tax payments. Plus, there's a whole slew of kind of LCB things that we're looking on as well for all of our licensees in terms of allowing you a year off from paying your renewal fees, increasing the licensee discount. All of that is part of our legislative framework. There will be a hearing next week to talk about the impact this order has had. So we will be asking probably some of you on this call to participate in that hearing. It's going to be in the House, and we are already in conversations about what legislative help the industry is going to need. So I know it's frustrating, whether it's right or wrong. This is the world that we are in. But we really think that between the petition and getting some legislative support, plus the federal priorities, which I touched upon in last week's webinar, so I'm not going to go over them again. Those are all things that I think we can use to move the needle here and get you back to some type of normalcy. And with that, I think that we are at the question phase of the presentation. So outdoor events for 250 people, that is any type of event. And it's even broader. I've been using weddings a lot. I mean, this is your fairs, your festivals, your wine tastings, any type of event that is a select group of people outdoors is 250 people. If you are having an event, a wedding outside, the tables need to be socially distancing. All of those requirements still apply. But the definition of event is pretty broad, while it is still also being inclusive of outdoor events. And there's the definitions in here, and there's so many freaking pages that they gave me. let me see. So an event or gathering for outdoors is a temporary grouping of individuals for defined purposes that takes place over a limited time frame, such as hours or days. For example, events and gatherings include fairs, festivals, concerts, or shows and groupings that occur within larger, more permanent businesses, such as shows or performances within amusement parks, individual showings of movies on a single screen, pretty much business meetings, conferences, party or reception within a multi-room venue. So that event is pretty much inclusive of everything that is not just the public going in to a restaurant, essentially. And I know Andrew had put up the link to all of this guidance, and there's a lot more in there. Like if you are in the movie theater business, there's very specific things for you. Can a licensed food service venue hold events over 25 guests using their outdoor space or tenting in a parking lot? So yes, and this was a question that was addressed in the FAQ. You can combo. You can use your indoor and your outdoor space, but you can't have more than 25 people indoor at any point in time. So if you have 200 people and you're going to allow some people inside, you have to make sure that no more than 25 people are going into that inside space compared to the outside space. So you can combo it, but inside you can't have more than 25 people. Are catered events, offsite events considered differently under the latest WOLF actions? Catered events are subject to the same rules as before, except that they now have the new limitations. So the 25-person indoor, 250 outdoor, no bar service indoor. You have to, and this is something I talked about a little bit ago, food and beverage consumption has to be in a seat. So you can't have a standing cocktail hour right now. You need to have people seated when they're consuming their food and beverages. That's kind of the basis of all of this. At a university conference center, are meetings exempt from the 25-person restrictions as long as we can provide the physical distancing requirement and mask wearing guidelines? It depends on, your meetings can't have more than 25 people in a room. But I don't know if you're saying that if it's a school conference or if it applies to schools. But still, that would still require the 25-person rule. So it's 25 people in a room.
Yeah, Melissa, the way I read it is,
yeah,
the way I read it is if you were in a classroom setting, you could have more, but if you had an assembly or a conference within the school, you had to adhere to the 25, just like you said.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I've heard of wedding venues reorganizing as a restaurant and trying to fall within the 25% capacity order. However, they would still be bound by the 25 people or less restriction. Yes, that is true. And they clarified that in the guidance. So that 25%, it's basically 25% or 25 people, whatever is less in terms of a private event. Okay, we got through the audio troubles. Why can't a single patron sit at the bar to eat and drink? I understand they don't want patrons drinking, but why should a single patron have to sit at a foretop? I would ask the governor or the Secretary of Health that question, because I think I think in an effort to try and stop what used to be congregating at a bar, which could have probably been easily addressed by creating an order, like I said, a butt needs to be in a seat. They decided to go this route. So I'm not saying it makes sense. I can only tell you that these are the rules as they have been provided to us and of course to you. Okay. While we know that wedding groups over 25 have to be outdoors, can we have bars and buffets if they're outdoors and the guests have to return to their tables to eat and drink? Yes, and I think I did cover that in terms of the outdoor bar service, which initially they said no. So 25%, yeah, is inclusive of staff. So 25%, 25 people, 250 people, 50 people in Allegheny, whatever it is, that is inclusive of staff. The current orders seem unclear regarding outdoor occupancy limits for restaurants and catered events in Allegheny County. Both the Allegheny County and state orders have limits for events and gatherings, but specifically exclude the definition of events and gatherings. Okay, there's I think I addressed this before. I can only tell you that Allegheny County has told us 50 is their number for outdoors. So Allegheny County for weddings, private events, 25 indoor, 50 outdoors. I asked if there was any wiggle room, and they said we're enforcing 50. So I would urge you, if you have concerns or questions on that, in Allegheny County specifically, since 50 is their number, I would urge you to reach out to that health department because they're going to be the enforcers of that number. Thank you, Philip, we're trying. It is a crazy situation. For a 2-story wedding venue, can they allow 25 guests downstairs and 25 guests downstairs at the same time? Yes, but they can't commingle. So it's like, I think I've used it before. It's like a middle school dance. Like the guys are on one side of the room and the girls are on the other. They never want to meet in the middle. You cannot have a mingling of the two groups. Now you could have a separate event, one wedding on the second floor, a separate wedding on the first floor, and they're probably not going to commingle, but you can't just separate it and call it 2 separate spaces if you can't keep the 2 groups completely separated. If food is done on the premise, would this fall under the 25% even for an event? I don't know if I understand the question. Christy, you might need to rephrase food. So that might be the food requirement. No, I mean, no matter what, you need to have food, prepared food on the premises. From Ben, question for multiple Philadelphia restaurants, must all on-premise food and alcohol sales in Philadelphia stop at 10 p.m.? I'm not aware of that. We would need to ask the city of Philadelphia. I know that outdoor seating has to close. I do not believe that there is a ban on serving to-go food after 10 p.m. But Ben, you were just out with an inspector last week, so I'm gonna, yell at you for not asking that question. But we can look into that. Does no limit on alcohol apply to the state or county Allegheny? In Allegheny County, you can have more than 3 drinks as long as you get a burger or a hot dog or chicken fingers. So the 3-drink limit in Allegheny County no longer applies. Are casinos allowed to serve alcohol at their bars? They are not. If you see them, please turn them in. For the casinos, generally, their food and beverage requirements fall under this. So there can be no alcohol service within the casino, so no free drinks whatsoever. If they have a bar, the bar cannot be open because it's inside in the casino, and their restaurants, their food courts, all of that is reduced to 25% capacity. And then if they have private events, all of those limits apply to them as well. I think I went over the rules for indoor-outdoor venue. But if I didn't, somebody has a more specific question, I'll try and take another crack at it. Is it 25% capacity instead of 25 persons if you have a restaurant license? So the 25% capacity for a restaurant is when you're serving the public. So it's when me and my friend come in and Eric, who works in our office, comes in with his wife when you're open to the public. That's your 25% trigger. For a private event, like if you're doing a private dinner or you're doing a group, that is when the 25-person rule triggers. So it just depends on if you're open to the public, that anybody can walk in off the street, or if you're doing a specific event. And keep in mind, the rules for the event still apply in terms of the guest list. So keep that in mind. It was a Zoom bomb. Is 1 hot dog sufficient as a meal? I eat a hot dog for lunch every once in a while, and if you consume it on the premise, I'm not going to knock you for it. I'm curious to see if the LCB comes out with more guidance on that front, but it has to be 1 hot dog per person, and it has to be with the alcohol. So yeah, so outdoor dining for Philadelphia, it still stipulates end of service at 10, but I think you can still do takeout, but we will look into that. Can a customer come in and drink, order food, but take the food to go to consume off premises? This is an LCB one I'm waiting on, but the answer is probably going to be no. But I'm waiting. They did not delineate that in the 10 pages of FAQs that we received. So I'm going to tell you no. They have to consume both on the premise, but I think the LCB will clarify that, but I think you would have a problem in that space. Okay. if a hotel has 2 separate outdoor areas in Allegheny County, it can each have a party of 50 going on at the same time. Yes, I think I mentioned this, as long as you're delineating between the 2 spaces, yes. Golf courses have to serve meals with alcohol. Yes, hold on, there was a specific, I knew I was gonna get asked from a golf course. There was a specific golf course.
I just pulled it up,
You
Melissa.
got it, John?
Yeah,
Thank you.
there is a beer, wine, and cocktails purchased to go must not be consumed on premises. However, to-go service facilities such as golf courses may permit beverages to be consumed on the course, but may not permit beverages to be consumed in areas where individuals may congregate, picnic tables, patios, etc.
Can you clarify what outdoor is defined as? I believe they define that it has to have 2 open walls to be outdoor. So a venue that is a pavilion would be considered outdoors. You can have a tent. If you have a tent that has walls on it, they urge you to open up the walls at least on 2 sides to allow air circulation. That's the whole kind of point of them allowing you to have up to 250 outdoors.
I think they modified it on this guidance to say 3 open sides for outdoor. So what I read. And the tent requirement, like you said, is the same. You can have a tent, and they recommend that you have some of the sides open. But I'm pretty sure it said 3 sides now for outdoor.
Okay, well, there you go.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, John. I'd rather get it out there than have it be wrong. And like I said, we are still waiting
Okay.
for the specifics from the LCB.
Here's what it actually says. It says indoor dining occurs in a fully or largely enclosed 2 walls or more space. On the other hand, outdoor dining occurs in a completely or largely open air space, open on 3 sides. So it sounds like that's kind of contradictory because there's something in between indoor and outdoor, I guess. I don't know what that is, but that's what it says.
Somebody figures it out, let us know. For a public event outdoors with a special occasion permit in play, food trucks or other vendors, does everyone have to be seated for eating and drinking, and is walk-up bar service allowed? And can multiple groups of 250 gather if outdoor space is divided? Okay, so everybody has to be seated for eating and drinking. That's step 1. So if they go up to a food truck and get some food, they need to go and sit down to consume the food. I know that's difficult, but that's the rule. So they do have to be seated. Walk-up bar service for an outdoor event is permitted. And you can have multiple groups of 250, but they can't intermingle. So you can't, and I think that would be difficult, to be honest, to ensure that they don't intermingle. But you can have more than 250 people in a space as long as they're socially distanced and the spaces are clearly delineated and they don't cross over, which I think would be difficult. Are dance floors and live music allowed in Philadelphia as well? Well, you can't do anything inside right now in Philadelphia, and we're still waiting for the inside, but technically there isn't a ban on dance floors or live music in Philadelphia right now. Can outdoor dance floors be open to the public for non-events, for example, an outdoor nightclub with a food option? It can. You can't have more than, if you have an outdoor space, they have to be seated. Everybody has to have a seat, so you need to make sure your tables are socially distanced. They can go on the dance floor, but they need to be wearing their masks at all times. So I don't know how easy that would be. And also for the nightclub, you do want to make sure that you're not captured in that Clean Indoor Air Act definition, which is another one we're waiting from the LCB for guidance on, because there is a required closure of nightclubs as defined by the Clean Indoor Air Act. But we have asked the question, if a nightclub serves food, could it be exempt? And that's going to come out in the LCB guidance, which I was hoping that we would have today, but you know, here we are 5 days in and still waiting. Can you please discuss food stations, buffets for indoor and outdoor events? I think we did cover that one. Steph, thank you for putting up the petition. And John did cover the golf course question. There's a venue in my area that thinks they're going to use a religious exemption to not have to abide by the latest rules. They are a wedding and event venue, what can be done about that? I have had people ask about the religious exemption. And I have said, you could, not saying you do, have an argument for the ceremony, but that's it. I mean, once you perform the ceremony, you're now in the reception and that triggers the requirement. So there is no blanket religious exemption that you can use to get around the 25 person or 250 person requirement. So I would be careful on that. So could you say that it's a Catholic mass and a priest is coming in to do the ceremony? You could say that, but that doesn't apply to the reception. If 4 people sit at a table, do all have to order something to eat? It has to be enough food to justify a meal. So, for example, I like to go to wine bars and get meat and cheese platters, and I usually consider that a meal. So I think your basis for all of this is if you have 4 people sitting at a table and one person orders a burger, or 2 people order a burger and the other 2 don't, though you need to have enough food that validates for 4 people. So if they get 2 or 3 appetizers to share, I think you're fine. Your biggest thing, it's going to be those who are saying, you can get a bag of chips for 25 cents, or here's a bowl of popcorn that we're going to put in the middle of the table. Those are the things they're looking at. It's not, and I know I continue to get as annoyed as all of you are, it's not as cut and dry as we want it to be. But there needs to at least be an effort there. If somebody orders a burger and they ask for 2 plates because they're going to split it, I would say that would be fine. And we're gonna follow up on the Philadelphia closing dining situation. I will add that to my list. Can an order of fries, crab fries be? I would say that you could consider that a meal, yes. Especially if they're crab fries. That's like 3 meals. I think I covered the 250 outdoors. I think I've gotten that question a few times. We're going to clarify the Philadelphia situation. I did not know we were going to get Philadelphia questions today, so I apologize. I did not look those up in advance. I did read the outdoor event definition. The webinar and the slides will be available after the webinar is over. Where am I? Hold on. I think I was getting some repeated questions. These latest restrictions really are similar to yellow phase. Thank you for asking this question, Kelly. Have you heard any rumblings from the government leadership about going fully back to the red phase? There is a website, and it's a terrible website, and I think it's called breakingnewspa.com, and they put up an article that had no person attributed, was not from any reliable news source, that said that some counties were going back to red and the governor is going to announce it today. And for the first time, I've actually seen the governor and the Department of Health come out swinging, saying that is absolutely not true. We are not doing that. That is not in the plan at all. Now, once upon a time, they told us they weren't going to do more mitigation against restaurants. So, I mean, who knows what the future could bring. But there are no thoughts right now to do that. Now, if cases increase, Philadelphia, you were a little high today because you reported from the weekend. I think we need to be concerned about that. But as of today, there is no talk of that. Can people sit at a table, have a drink, and order food to go? We're going to get clarification on that one. Do all-inclusive resorts have different guidelines, as food is included in their packages, but guests pay for alcohol? We would need, Sophia, we would have to look into that. That's one I don't know off the top of my head if that would be permitted or not. Yes, in Philadelphia, it's 250 wait, no, Philadelphia is 25. In Philadelphia, you are still at 25 no matter what, indoor, outdoor, I'm pretty sure. I might just have to have a Philadelphia webinar at this rate. Philadelphia does not allow for the 250. And John answered according to John, your 2 open walls and 2 closed walls are not considered outdoors. So that's that answer. Can a bar counter be used for takeout service if customers are just picking up takeout and getting a growler to go? Yes, they have changed nothing in terms of your ability to do takeout or provide takeout. I answered a buffet question. If an employee tests positive for COVID in Allegheny County or anywhere really, isn't it true a restaurant is supposed to close down for 24 hours for cleaning? Dana, you're allowed to go off topic. Yeah, so CDC rules say you should actually close for 24 hours and then deep clean after 24 hours. Now the guidance specifically says you have to close for 24 hours or as long as it's practicable. So what they're thinking in those spaces is for a hotel that can't actually shut down the entire hotel for 24 hours, you would need to mitigate and shut down the areas that you can. For a restaurant, I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a case of COVID, close for 24 hours and do a deep clean before you reopen. That's going to be your best practice, and that is what the CDC guidance suggests. Is cocktail service permitted in an outdoor area to seated guests without a food purchase? No, no alcohol, no food. You will get COVID if you have alcohol without food. Sorry, I won't be as tongue-in-cheeky, but it was too easy to resist. Is it possible for venues to be lobbied to host a % of capacity instead of 25 people? Our ballroom and pre-function space is 10,000 square feet. John, what are the chances of percentage instead of 25?
Slim. We're working on trying to get it back to 50%, but it's we don't know how we got here in the first place. So we're doing everything we can to try to steer the ship back to the 50%, but I don't feel really good about it. We were working on trying to get capacity caps limited and just go to a 50%, which would have helped the 10,000 square foot ballroom, but I don't think that's going to be in the offing for the near future.
Okay, I think I answered this question. One event, one wedding has used both floors. Can they still occupy? They can, but you'd have to separate them. They could not intermingle. Thank you, Chris Barrett, for the note. I think we've covered outside, left, right, and in between. And also take a look at the guidance as well, because there are some further definitions and things in there that I didn't always touch upon in here. Then I think you put out a question. I think you're answering the question, so I'm just going to keep on going. Is there a limit on how long someone can sit at a table and eat or drink? There is not. The guidance says you should urge people not to linger, but there is no requirement or limit. Now, we have seen some restaurants, and it might be something to consider, have said you can't sit for more than an hour and a half in an effort to turn over tables. That is an operational decision you can make. It is not a requirement from the government. John answered that golf question. What time are you allowed to seat until? It depends at where you're Philly. So, I mean, Philadelphia, you can't do outdoor seating past 10 o'clock. So that's where Philly is. And we can do, Ben, you and I can talk about it. If we need to do a Philadelphia specific webinar, we can certainly look into that, because I know Philadelphia will have different rules when they do allow indoor dining. What is the PRLA position on extending $600 unemployment? Steve asked me that on Wednesday during my regular webinar. I can't go off topic anymore. I'm hitting the end of the day. If at a resort, if you have dinner in the dining room, can you go to the outside bar and have a drink without buying another meal? It needs to be done in conjunction with a meal. So I would say that they should keep their tab open, and then they'd be fine. Or have some type of proof. Maybe it's a ticket or something that shows that they purchased a meal. That's one of the things we're looking for from the LCB in terms of food trucks. So that might be included in some further guidance we get. And like I said, we should have that by Wednesday. So I will spend a lot of time on Wednesday's webinar going through some of those questions. Everybody has to have food. Everyone has to have a meal. It can't just be one. We did the outdoor venue. If you do encounter a restaurant not complying with distance mask rules, I'm assuming, yep, Ben already took care of that. There are links to turn people in if they're not requiring it. For food to be served for outside for a 250 person event, it's up to you. They haven't stopped buffets. They haven't stopped stations. You're going to want to be careful. And I've talked about this in the past. If their butt isn't in a seat, they need to be wearing a mask. When they get their food, they need to go sit back down. You might want to have your servers serving instead of people putting their hands in a buffet. Those are all things that you'd want to think about. We are having people who put in takeout orders wait outside. Can they sit at the bar while they put their order in? Because they are not allowed to be standing in the bar area, but they're not allowed to be seated at the bar. What's a girl to do? They cannot sit at the bar. If they have a takeout order, they need to stand outside. I mean, they're not eating or drinking. The rule is that you can't stand if you're eating or drinking. So they could stand within the restaurant to wait for their takeout order, but they can't, there can be no seated people sitting at the bar. I can't make it make sense to you. The blueprint for revival, that was on last week's webinar, and I will talk about it again on this week's webinar. But yes, business interruption insurance is included. Are singers allowed for private events outside? None of the new rules impact live music. The singer needs to be at least 6 feet distant, because obviously they can't wear a mask. So at least have 6 feet of your entertainment away from your guests. How many can be seated at one table? Hearing up to 10 if family, but up to 6 if not. That still remains the general guidance of you shouldn't have more than 10 people in a party. It's still not a requirement. Obviously 25 is your ultimate cap. But they do suggest not more than 10 people in a single party. If it's more than 10, it should be family. But that's one of those things that it's not really enforceable. So it really is a recommendation. Is there a suggested resource? I'm assuming Ben probably already linked to all of the links on the Philadelphia site. If you go to Philadelphia, and it's Reopen Philadelphia, I think you can probably just Google Reopen Philadelphia. That includes all of the guidance for hotels, restaurants, outdoor dining, and everything. How long is this new puke green expected to last? We don't know. I can't predict. And bartenders refuse hours running food to cars, claiming that they no longer have a job and collect unemployment compensation. No, they can't. You would have to actually lay them off. John, do you want to provide more information to Tripp, or?
No, I was just going to say back to Joseph's question. Melissa actually pushed this question as far as the one below that about how long it's going to last. And they said that the Secretary of Health does not want to lay out any expectations. So she tried to get answers on that. We've tried, but couldn't get any.
Can you serve a meal family style to a table? Yes, there isn't a restriction on that. The petition is already available on social media. I think it's on all of our social media, so check out, and I know there's a link that was included here, so please check that out. If bar is open during ceremony, can guests drink their drink standing and watching ceremony? No, they have to be seated. And I really liked sipping champagne during weddings. That's like a new thing, and I really liked it, but you can't do it. I don't know what please is, but I think I might have given an answer somebody didn't want. What fines and repercussions are we truly looking at, and who is enforcing them? Robert, that's the question of the day. In the end of the order from the Department of Health, they are saying that state police is going to be enforcing, and that Department of Ag is going to be enforcing, and your local police are going to be enforcing. That is what they are saying. I can't tell you. I mean, how many times do you have an association that represents restaurants telling them to shut down people that are breaking the rules, and they're still saying they're giving warnings? They have said there will be increased enforcement. They've talked about that. That's what they're saying, is that there will be enforcement. I can't tell you what they're going to do, because we begged from the beginning, instead of doing more mitigation, just enforce the bad actors, because all of you who take the time to spend this hour with me are not the ones causing the problem. It's the people that aren't on this call that are. They say it's going to be enforced. I can't tell you how much and what it's going to be. If it's going to be pulling licenses or not. I think enforcement will increase, but we haven't seen it yet. So until I actually see them citing people and pulling licenses. In Philadelphia, they are shutting people down. I will say that. In Allegheny County, I think they're looking at being more forceful. Across the state, I can't speak to it. I don't think I've been skipping over the question of buffets at events outdoors. Buffets are permitted. I think I covered that twice maybe now. Buffets are only banned in yellow. We're not in yellow. There is nothing saying you can't do a buffet. Just be thoughtful about doing a buffet. I mean, just be careful with it. while the focus is on restaurants, I think it would be beneficial to also note the effect on hotels with banquet facilities or restaurants attached and the impact of those rules on them as well to amplify the message and scope of the negative impact. Actually, we had an internal conversation, because I think this is related to the survey, about adding all of these extra sections to include all of these extra entities. And the hope is that by using the survey to get our foot in the door, we're going to take care of everybody. But when we started adding in all of the extra things that we needed for our event spaces, we realized that as long as we can get the changes that we need, generally it's going to be inclusive of those. So please, I know somebody asked, can we do a separate one? I think this straightforward, you got to think of your average Joe on the street. Like all of us here absolutely care about private events and weddings, but John Smith walking down the street is more upset that he can't go sit at the bar and have a beer at the end of the day. So that's why it is more broad, I think, than some of you might think it should be. Can you please clarify if any of this guidance is applicable to venues that are not licensed by the health department or LCB? Larry, I might need an example. I mean, the limits, the 25 to 50 is anywhere. I mean, that could even be a house party. I know in New Jersey they were cracking down on that. So that would be your local police that would enforce that. I mean, technically, if you're a food or liquor establishment, ag or LCB are going to be your enforcers, but the limits on people congregating is universally applied and could be enforced by your local police. Walk-up bar at outdoor event is okay, Tim, and I was surprised too, but that's what it says. Rules for a private club. All of these rules apply to a private club. So the 25 person, 25%, all of that, it's applicable to everybody. What the CDC suggests and what is required is a big difference. Do restaurants have to follow these or just the requirements? I think that might be the COVID, the question. I mean, the requirement, if in that, we can put that link up there as well. There is specific requirements from the state of what you should do if somebody tests positive for COVID, and that includes the deep cleaning, that includes temperature testing people. Now, like I said, the guidance is done in a way that it's broad enough to try and encompass everything. So I'm telling you that it says you should shut down for 24 hours if practicable and then do a deep clean. Now you could say it's only smart for me to shut down for 8 hours and then do a deep clean, but I can tell you this, and I do want to make this point. There are Facebook groups out there now, like in a ton of counties, where they're flagging anybody who's not really following this or doing it right. So I would suggest, God forbid you have a case of COVID, that you shut down for 24 hours and then do a deep clean. But definitely check the guidance from the Department of Health. And if it's not practicable for you to do so, and you think that you can sanitize your entire establishment for less than that, then I can't tell you otherwise. But I will say that is what the rules say. So can someone buy food and leave for another friend? I guess you could buy food, and then if that person can have food and drink, I guess that would be allowed. Like I said, the food and alcohol combo, some of those details we're hoping we're going to get from the LCB. And yes, we will look at doing a Philadelphia specific webinar. Can I have 2 25 people meetings in 2 separate sections, but open the air wall for a presentation if everyone is seated, and close the wall when everyone is eating? No. I'm going with no, but John can.
That's a definite no, Melissa. Some places have elected to use video technology to simulcast the presentation into the other room with the air wall closed, and that would be 2 discrete 25-person gatherings, and I think that would be fine.
I have a question. Everyone at a table has to be eating. You can't. You guys are not. You're not the cops. You're not the LCE. Thank God. There needs to be enough food ordered that would satisfy that it would feed 4 people at a meal. You are not expected to like peep over the booth and make sure everybody is putting a nacho in their mouth. But you have to make sure that, like I said, if somebody comes in and there's 4 of them and they say, we just want 1 order of chicken fingers, I would say that would probably be something that you would want to flag. But it's not your job to make sure they eat. It's your job to make sure they get food with their alcohol. Do we have to close at a certain time indoor dining? Allegheny County is 11 o'clock for indoor. Philadelphia can't do indoor. And yeah, there is not a requirement to close for indoor dining. Just 25% is your capacity. I have to make like a chart, I think, for all of these different rules. I think we were clarified that it's 50 people outside in Philadelphia, but we will do a separate event or a separate webinar where I will try and actually get the Philadelphia Department of Health on that for all of you. I think that would be helpful at this point. Indoor catering events are limited to 25, including staff. Yes, that is correct. For sitting, does it need to be at a table or can it be a freestanding seat by itself? All service must be at a table or booth. There you go. It can't be a freestanding seat. That was a good question. I had to check that one. Is entertainment included in the 25-person, 250-person max? Yes, it's inclusive of any body, any beating heart on the premises. Ben included a link for the Philadelphia reopening. Can you confirm if special events in Philadelphia can be inside? No, nothing inside in Philadelphia. You can't have any indoor events whatsoever inside in Philadelphia. Okay, let's see. Could a private banquet room that is adjacent to a restaurant be repurposed to increase the capacity of indoor seating for the restaurant so long as it meets the 25% capacity limitation? Yes, but we would need to check the liquor code on that to make sure that you don't need it. It depends on if it's licensed as part of the property. Yes, I would say that you can. Yes, but we might want to double check the liquor code on that front.
The only other rub might be on that, Melissa, like we ran into in the one case in Allegheny in Pittsburgh, where they were doing that, but it had been rated, fire code rated only for the main premises, and they couldn't get it adjusted to include the expanded premises, even though it was part of the inside capacity. So Margaret, that may or may not be an issue. If your whole floor is fire code rated for a particular amount, including the banquet room, and you turned it into part of the dining room, that would seem to fit the definition.
If the line from your establishment is not on your property, i.e. the right of way, are you responsible to maintaining and enforcing mask wearing and social distancing? I don't know. Do you understand that question better than I do, John?
Yeah, I think it's when you have people outside waiting to come in to the restaurant,
okay,
or waiting to pick up orders. And I think, I don't know whether you have a responsibility or not, but I know that if you don't try to do that, you're either going to get nabbed by public opinion or by some sort of violation, because they're coming to your place. The fact that they happen to be standing on somebody else's property, to me, is incidental, but that's just my opinion, not necessarily a rule.
Some thank yous. Thank you for the thank yous. If a walk-up bar is okay to catered event, is the same true for an outdoor restaurant? No. Don't ask me to explain it. I don't understand it either, but they like specifically delineate between an outdoor private event and an outdoor bar at a restaurant. I don't know. I don't know. Yep, it's just for, yeah, I don't think it makes sense either, but that's what it says. Thank you, Jeannie, for the thank you. We're trying. Philadelphia needs help. What if they order food and the table gets cleared and they order more drinks? As long as they ordered food, doesn't matter. I mean, as long as they have their bill, they got their meal, they could sit there for 4 hours and drink and they won't get COVID apparently. So, I mean, great news all around. Yeah, that's, as long as you have the proof, like like if LCE comes in and goes, where's their food? Well, you have it on their bill, so you're covered there.
Melissa, I don't know how they enforce this, but they had that one question that said, If alcohol is only served with a meal, can a person get a second or third drink? Yes. There is no limit on the number of drinks that can be served. However, patrons should not linger at a restaurant after they have finished their meal. So I don't know how you enforce that, but that's what it says in that particular question, for what it's worth. That's not the LCB version, though. That's the version from the health department.
Do we need catering staff to approach guests not wearing masks or a manager on duty? I would say the manager is probably the more appropriate person, but you need to make sure, I mean, people need to wear masks. There's just no way around it. And if they don't, they don't care. I mean, that's the only thing we know that's preventing the spread. That's the only thing we know that's protecting your employees who, whether they're inside or outside, are wearing a mask for hours and hours at a time to protect their guests. The least the guests can do is wear a mask. And it's your job to inform them, and it's your job to let them know that if they don't, then the event might get shut down because you're not compliant. And I know I keep on getting forceful on that front. I can't change the mask rule, but it's your job to make sure that they're putting you and your guests and your employees at risk if they're not wearing a mask. To keep guests at 25 inside the venue, can you also seat the remaining guests on an outdoor patio and have it count towards the 250 outdoors limit, or does it still apply to the 25 limit because it's connected to the building itself? I think we did answer that question. You can do it, but they made it clear you can't have more than 25 people inside at any point in time. So that's the rules. We might get some more from the LCB on that front. That one seems like the LCB would be all into that. What bars are doing around here is implementing a $1 hot dog tax. If you don't want to eat, that is fine, but you still get charged $1 on your bill. Some have even started a $1 COVID menu. You need to give them food. I mean, it's not like a tax that you can pay and say, I mean, that seems tricky to me. And I would think that would probably not pass muster under an inspection. I can appreciate the creativity. I just don't know if it would pass muster for inspection. Is there a count limitation for a catering event in a private home? They're subject to the 25 people. Now, that might have been similar to the question I got before where somebody said, who's enforcing? In that case, it's going to be the neighbor next door who's annoyed that somebody's having a party with more than 25 people that calls the police and they come and investigate. It's probably not going to be on you as much as it's going to be the homeowner. But that 25, 250 is applicable to everywhere. Can I have unlimited people inside my building in Philly as long as they are working on HVAC and advertising teams plus staff, etc., as long as they wear masks? I mean, if you have people working or employees in Philly, that would be allowed. You can't be offering food and beverage service though. That might be, I'm not sure if I understand that one. And more than 10 people sit together. I think I answered that one at one table at a private event. The recommendations are 10 people max unless they're in the same family, but it continues to be a recommendation. I think 10 is probably a good rule of thumb to follow, but it is not a requirement. Thanks, Lisa. It is good grief. Thank you, Michael. It is a crazy update. I think, am I nearing the end? Hold on.
Yes, I think you are.
Okay.
Oh, no. No. Wait, one more.
Okay. Wedding is outside in a tent. The guests go outside of the tent. So long as they maintain appropriate social distancing, are they required to wear a mask there, or does the restaurant event space expand there? This is assuming they do not have a drink or plate of food with them. If they are leaving the venue and like going for a walk down the street or a walk around the surrounding park, I mean, the state rules say that if they are going to be near anybody with less than 6 feet social distancing, they should wear a mask. Now, if they are outside of the purview of your event space, that's not going to be on you to enforce. So if I'm in the tent at the wedding and I'm getting really hot and I want to go for a walk and I walk outside and I take my mask off, that's not on you. Now, when I try to come back into the tent, which is where the event is being held and that the licensed area, the mask needs to go back on. And yes, keep your ramp training in mind too. That's very true. And we are trying to keep the craziness straight. And like I said, a lot of these things, I know some of these questions, we will look into doing a Philadelphia specific webinar, because I know we got a lot of specific questions on that. Philadelphia, you're kind of just in a weird place because you can't even do indoor. And to be honest, until we have that guidance, I can't predict your future, sadly. But we should be getting more detailed instructions from the LCB. And when we do, I will cover that on Wednesday's webinar. It will be in social media. It will be in the daily update if we do get that. So you can register for that if that's all you're interested in. I imagine that a lot of these questions will be repeated on Wednesday. I think we made it to the end.
That's it.
We
Thank you,
did.
Melissa. Great
Stay
job.
strong, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, John. We will send this recording out and we'll have it up on our website for everybody to reference.
Thanks, everyone. Be safe.
Thanks. Be safe. Bye.